It seems there's lawsuit fever going around at the moment, as we have multiple lawsuits being filed against Qualcomm. Now, first of all, we have Apple filing a lawsuit against Qualcomm, claiming that they have unfairly insisted on charging royalties, and went further to accuse Qualcomm of overcharging for their chips and also refusing to pay Apple $1 billion in rebates, which apparently were promised. Now, you may recall my video fairly recently that discussed how the antitrust regulator in South Korea had actually fined Qualcomm pretty heavily for what were called anti-competitive practices. And apparently Apple were in discussions with the antitrust regulator and told them what was going on, and of course this helped them make their decision. And Apple is basically saying that Qualcomm are withholding this $1 billion in rebates in retaliation for them discussing what was going on with the antitrust regulator. According to the CNBC, Apple said that Qualcomm has taken, quote, radical steps, including withholding nearly $1 billion in payments from Apple as retaliation for responding truthfully to law enforcement agencies investigating them. Despite being just one of over a dozen companies who contributed to basic cellular standards, Qualcomm insists on charging Apple at least 5 times more in payments than all the other cellular patent licenses we have agreements with combined. So some pretty hefty accusations that of course are not only backing up what's happened previously with the antitrust regulator, but also legitimately helped them make their case to bring the fine forward. Now you might be wondering, well, what's the other lawsuit? Well, the other one is from the US FTC, which of course is the Federal Trade Commission, and they are suing Qualcomm for anti-competitive practices. They are basically saying that Qualcomm has been forcing phone manufacturers to pay dramatically higher fees for using its patents in an attempt to maintain its monopoly, again lining up with what everyone else has been saying. The FTC complaint reads, quote, Qualcomm precluded Apple from sourcing baseband processors from Qualcomm's competitors from 2011 to 2016. Qualcomm recognised that any competitor that won Apple's business would become stronger, and used exclusivity to prevent Apple from working with and improving the effectiveness of Qualcomm's competitors. In all, Qualcomm's 2011 and 2013 agreements with Apple provided for billions of dollars in conditional rebates from Qualcomm to Apple. All of this was reported just the other day, but now we have a response from Qualcomm themselves, who have dubbed the $1 billion lawsuit from Apple baseless, and also accused them of regulatory attacks in both the US and South Korea. And they released a statement which reads, quote, while we are still in the process of reviewing the complaint in detail, it is quite clear that Apple's claims are baseless. Apple has intentionally mischaracterized our agreements and negotiations, as well as the enormity and value of the technology we have invented, contributed and shared with all mobile device makers through our licensing program. Apple has been actively encouraging regulatory attacks on Qualcomm's business in various jurisdictions around the world, as reflected in the recent KFTC decision and FTC complaint, by misrepresenting facts and withholding information. We welcome the opportunity to have these meritless claims heard in court. We'll be entitled to full discovery of Apple's practices and a robust examination of the merits. Now, given that this involves two obscenely rich companies, that being Qualcomm and Apple, as well as the FTC, this is most likely going to draw out for months, if perhaps even years, as they have an army of very expensive lawyers at their disposal, each one of them, I'm sure. But it could be really, really interesting. Now, the fact that they were fined already in South Korea and the FTC has gotten involved, it doesn't exactly paint a pretty picture. Now, I'm not saying they're already guilty because, well, you know, that's kind of what the court case is around. Whether or not they're actually going to be found guilty of these accusations, well, we're going to have to wait and see. But it's not exactly looking good, at least on the offset. Of course, it could very well come out that Qualcomm are right. Apple are twisting the facts for their own benefit. But this has been a bit of a theme as of late with Qualcomm being sued for antitrust. And I'm sure the FTC didn't just get involved frivolously because, you know, for the lols. I mean, there must have been something provided by Apple that made them think, okay, we need to at least look into this. Again, they might find Qualcomm innocent, or not guilty at least, or whatever. They might not end up having to pay all this money, because obviously guilty and not guilty doesn't really apply in this instance, but you know, fastest way to say what I mean. They might not have to pay all of the fines, they might have to pay some of it. You know, we don't know exactly how well or badly this is going to go for anyone involved. It could go any number of ways, but no matter which way it goes, it's definitely going to have an impact on the industry. You know, if Qualcomm end up becoming known and sort of found that yes, they did do this, yes, they committed antitrust practices, and they've had to pay X amount to Apple, it's definitely going to be interesting. You know, Apple have already been kind of moving away from their chips as it is, and this may signal other companies to do the same, and again have an impact on the industry there within the mobile gaming and just mobile market in general. You know, ripple effects, a butterfly spreads its wings and all of that. This definitely could have impacts if Qualcomm is found to have indeed done these practices that they are being accused of. So we're going to have to wait and see. It's definitely going to be an interesting one. Thank you very much for watching though, guys. As always, your support is highly appreciated, and I'll see you next time.